It was deep into the quiet hours after midnight. The bar was locked tight. I was alone, or so I thought. Then came the first loud crash from behind the bar, glass shattering hard like someone had thrown it. I dropped the mop and rushed over, heart hammering. I leaned across the counter and scanned the area behind the bar. Nothing. No one there. Just broken shards scattered across the floor, glinting under the dim lights. The area was completely empty. I stood there breathing fast, trying to make sense of it. A train must have shaken the building harder than usual. That had to be it. Did a homeless guy sneak in while I was unloading my cleaning equipment? I don't believe the ridiculous stories the day shift crew joke about. It's just an old building that rattles hard when one of the big freights pass. I called out anyway, voice echoing thin in the empty room. "Hello? Anyone there? This isn't funny." No answer. Just the low hum of the fridges and another distant train rumble. I glanced through the main front windows. The two shadowy figures were back across the street, standing motionless under the orange streetlights, watching the bar. I hadn't been there a minute ago, or at least I hadn't noticed them. Heads slightly tilted. My name's Jamie. For the past month, I've been doing the overnight cleaning shift at the Lantern, this old dive pub right beside the main train station. It's one of those places permanently soaked in decades of spilled beer, cigarette smoke, and the kind of worn history that seeps into the wooden bar top and scarred tile floors. The air always carries that heavy, sour smell of old beer mixed with stale smoke and something metallic underneath. The owner pays cash under the table for the late clean. It's lonely work, but the money helps when you're scraping by. The daytime staff loved telling stories about the place having a resident ghost. Glasses smashing on their own, cold spots, laughter or muffled voices coming from empty rooms after closing. I always laughed it off. It's just an old building next to a noisy train line, I'd say. I'm practical. I don't scare easy. That night started like any other. I arrived a little earlier than usual because the last crowd had left the place messier than normal. I locked the door, flipped on the main lights, but left the far end dim and got straight to work. I started with the mop, working methodically from the back toward the front. The rhythmic swish and squeeze mixed with the constant fridge hum. It was almost soothing. Then the first loud crash split the air again. A sharp, violent shatter, like a heavy glass had been hurled against the floor. Before I could even process it, a second smash followed right after, louder, more aggressive. I dropped the mop and rushed over. Nothing. No one there. Just more broken glass. I switched to the backpack vacuum. The motor roared to life, loud and steady, drowning out most other sounds. I used that noise like a shield. That's when I heard it. Faint laughter. It cut straight through the roar. Soft at first, like 2 or 3 people chuckling at a private joke. The sound moved around the room, first near the front windows, then drifting toward the dark hallway by the toilets. I killed the motor. I turned it back on. The laughter returned immediately, a little louder, almost playful. I turned it off again. Dead silence. Back on. Laughter. The air suddenly changed, like opening a freezer door. My breath started fogging even though the heating was still on low. The cold pressed against my back, then slowly moved around me, circling, getting closer with every pass. I kept vacuuming faster. Then the vacuum cut out by itself. In the sudden silence, I caught my distorted reflection in the curved, shiny side of the chrome trash can beside the bar. Right behind my shoulder, warped and stretched by the curved metal surface, stood a tall, pale human figure. It looked like it was leaning in, almost touching me. I spun around fast, ripping the vacuum straps off my shoulders, ready to swing the whole unit like a weapon. There was nothing there, just empty air. The cold pressing harder against my back now. Then a whisper, right behind my ear. Jamie. Quiet, almost gentle, a woman's voice. I stumbled forward, gripping the wooden top of the bar, spinning fast again. Nothing. But the shape. The voice had been so clear, so close. I was about to call it a night when the lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went black. Only the dim red glow of the emergency exit sign remained. An ear-splitting electronic scream tore through the bar. The alarm system had just gone off, triggered by the power failure. Now I was screwed. I could have just walked out and left the place screaming. But if that alarm kept blaring all night, it would wake the entire neighborhood, bring security running, and probably get me fired. I had no choice. I had to go down into the basement. While whatever had just smashed those glasses and whispered my name was still in there with me. I grabbed the flashlight from under the bar and headed toward the basement door. The stairs were narrow and steep, the air down there always damp and heavy with the smell of mold and old concrete. The beam of the flashlight cut through the darkness as I descended. The wooden steps shifted under my weight. I reached the bottom and swept the light around. It was a huge open space with extra chairs and tables stacked against the walls. Low ceiling with thick wooden joists covered in cobwebs that swayed gently. The flashlight started to flicker. The beam grew weaker, turning to a dim orange hue. The batteries were dying fast. Panic started to build in my chest. Then I saw it. The faint outline of a person standing near the shelves. I froze. Maybe a homeless person had snuck in. Maybe this wasn't paranormal at all. I called out, shouting to be heard over the screeching siren. "Hey, you're not supposed to be down here. Come out where I can see you." The outline didn't move, didn't respond, didn't even shift its weight. I took a slow, tentative step forward. The figure suddenly broke into a run, fast, silent, darting to the left into a darker corner and disappearing from my sight. Now I was unsure. Do I pursue the shadow or hit the breakers first? The corner was pitch black. The flashlight was barely aglow now. I slowly edged toward the breaker box, never turning my back on that dark corner, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The cold followed me, pressing closer. I reached the panel, reaching out with a shaking hand to open the dirty plastic cover. Just as my fingertips touched the box, the small light bulbs in the basement lazily glowed back to life. The alarm siren stopped. I was standing in the basement, alone. The sudden silence felt like a void. There was no one. The basement was empty. Just stacked furniture, cobwebs, and faint moonlight through the broken, barred windows. I bolted up the stairs, heart still racing, and slammed the basement door behind me. Back upstairs, the laughter was waiting. Softer now, but clearly amused, like it knew exactly how rattled I was. My hands were still shaking as I moved to the bar top to finish wiping it down. While rinsing the cloth in the sink, I glanced up at the big mirror behind the bottles. For several long seconds, my reflection was alone. And then I noticed something. In the reflection at the back of the room against the large front window, someone was there. Tall, still, head slightly tilted. I shouted and spun around so fast I lost my footing. My boots slipped on the wet floor, and I crashed down hard on my shoulder. For the second time tonight, when I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. But the laughter returned, softer than before, almost affectionate. It drifted around me like it was circling, enjoying the show. I didn't wait any longer. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my bag, and headed straight for the door. The laughter trailed softly behind me the whole way. Outside, the cold hit me immediately. Across the street, the two shadowy figures were still there, watching. As I locked up and hurried to my car, one of them slowly tilted its head, exactly the same angle as the shape in the mirror. The drive home was tense. The cold from the bar seemed to ride with me the entire way. The next morning, I found one of my own kitchen glasses sitting on the very edge of the sink, teetering. I live alone. I hadn't touched it. But the worst part came later that night. I woke up to the sound of soft laughter in my kitchen, with the vacuum sitting unplugged in the corner. And through the window, I could see two shadowy figures standing across the street, watching my building under the streetlights. They hadn't followed me. They were already waiting. If you ever take the late cleaning shift at an old bar next to a train station, don't do what I did. Don't tell yourself the crashes are just old shelves. The laughter is just weird motor noise, and the figures across the street are only rough sleepers. Some places don't empty out when the last customer leaves, and whatever's still there after midnight might decide the night cleaner makes better company than the drunks ever did. And once it knows you've heard it laughing, it might decide to follow you home.